Now that we have a first impression of what Eantime contains, we will look at the different configurations of Eantime, what is required to install them and how to get them running. An Eantime node requires a standard PC based on x86 or x64 processors from Intel or AMD. The BIOS/UEFI of this PC needs to be able to run Windows. Eantime is a headless OS. It needs significantly less processor power compared to Windows. However, real-time applications put high demand on the platform, specifically in terms of jitter for response to external interrupts. Use Eantime platform evaluation and graphical jitter tools to assess the PC you intend to use. An Eantime node in the Eantime for Windows configuration requires Windows which is ranging from XP SP3 up to and including Windows 10, including x64 and the available embedded variants. Multi-core processors are required to install Eantime for Windows configurations on any 64-bit Windows and all versions of Win 8 and higher. When a newer release of Windows is issued, Eantime will be validated with that one too. Before installing Eantime, you should care about the standard topics as for every software install. Because the installation modifies some system configuration parameters, you should be logged on as a Windows user with administrator privilege. It is recommended to terminate all open Windows applications. If an older version of Eantime had already been installed, make sure it is not running. This may require a system restart. After installing, a restart is required. Depending on the system, configuration of the Eantime node may require another restart. Installers for Windows are shipped as CD-ROM. The latest versions are also available for download to customers with valid support contract. Select an installer depending on your needs. SDK installer, Windows, and Eantime side. Combined with Visual Studio, contains everything to develop and debug your own real-time applications based on Eantime. Whether you use the SDK full or net installer depends on your SDK licensing option. The SDK also can create an USB installer for the Eantime distributed RTOS configuration. Runtime installer, Windows, and Eantime side. Contains everything to run the Windows side and the Eantime side of real-time applications on one or more hosts. Also contains the tools to configure and diagnose Eantime nodes. But you can't develop or debug Eantime application binaries. Host installer, Windows side only. Contains everything you need to run the Windows side of real-time applications based on Eantime. Also named NTX Application Support Framework. Use this installer when all Eantime nodes run on other hosts. Runtime CDEV installer, Windows, and Eantime side. Combined with application-specific code generators. Contains everything you need to create Eantime binaries from generated code or frameworks. Targeted towards environments like MATLAB/Simulink or application-specific tool chains like for robotics where you configure and build an application on the fly but don't do native debugging in Eantime. Runtime license is required for each Eantime node deployed. Eantime RT for single instance of an Eantime node on the host, Eantime MCRT for multiple instances of Eantime nodes on the same host. The Windows Services table lists a number of local Eantime services, including these. Eantime Clock Synchronization Service, regularly synchronizes the Windows time of day clock with the Eantime clocks. Eantime Database Service, database driver for DSM to store other Eantime nodes. Eantime Debugger Service, service to allow for SDM console debugging. Eantime Event Log Service, provides access to the Windows event log from Eantime real-time processes. Eantime I/O Service, provides console and disk I/O services to Eantime processes. Eantime Kernel Manager, loads and manages the Eantime nodes on this host. Eantime MDNS Service, MDNS service for Eantime remote connections. Eantime Node Detection Service, monitors connections between Windows and Eantime processes. Eantime Registry Service, provides access to the Windows registry from Eantime real-time applications. Eantime Remote Connection Manager, provides NTX services to remote Eantime systems. The hardware to install needs to be PC compatible. Installation then is split into two phases. First, boot an installer from supported media. Second, install Eantime distributed RTOS on supported media. Use the SDK to create an USB installer for the Eantime distributed RTOS configuration. For booting the installer, any device can be used that is supported for boot by the BIOS, hard disk, USB drive, DVD drive. Flash is an option if the BIOS has an extension that allows flash booting. The standard installer for Eantime distributed RTOS boots off an USB drive. More advanced configuration is done after the first reset using the web interface. Installation of Eantime can be done on media attached to ATA or SATA controllers. In terms of media, CF is supported but not recommended due to reliability of the devices. Other flash media, SSD for example, is okay. In terms of controllers, Intel chipsets are actively supported. Support for many others also is included but not all tested. There is some support for Intel RAID and Adaptec RAID, too. Use the SDK to create an USB installer for the Eantime distributed RTOS configuration. For booting the installer, any device can be used that is supported for boot by the BIOS, hard disk, USB drive, DVD drive. Flash is an option if the BIOS has an extension that allows flash booting. The standard installer for Eantime distributed RTOS boots from a USB drive. Installation of Eantime can be done on media attached to ATA or SATA controllers. In terms of media, compact flash is supported but not recommended. Other flash media, SSD for example, is okay. In terms of controllers, Intel chipsets are actively supported. Support for many others also is included but not all tested. There is some support for Intel RAID and Adaptec RAID, too. Licensing for Eantime follows the product life cycle. During development and maintenance, you use a number of SDK licenses. The number of licenses scales with the numbers of developers assigned to Eantime development. Each SDK license includes 2 runtime licenses for testing and /or deployment, one for nodes in the Eantime for Windows configuration sharing the host with the SDK, one for Eantime nodes running on a host in distributed RTOS configuration. For deployment and testing of your product, you use runtime licenses. Eantime is protected by electronic licensing technology from SafeNet and Flexera. There are different protection schemes for the licenses.